Yo, what's going on, everybody? We have the meta snapshot for patch 13.16. We are going to have a lot of mix-ups because it was a very large patch. A lot of new comps kind of came up. And this is one of those prime examples on why you need to wait a day or two for the meta to settle, because a lot of things people thought were OP on day one, and it just turns out that they're just all right. They're nothing crazy, nothing bad. But let's get on into the S tiers. I'm going to go over how to play every single one of these comps and then go over my strategy for this patch as well, as in like what I'm going to be doing, how other people are playing as well. But in the S tier, we have Challengers, Deadeye, Bastion, Aphelios, which is like one of the newer comps. It was played before, but very, very sparingly. And then Demacia. Demacia is going to be my favorite so far. I'm just going to be spamming that, as we'll talk about later when we go over the strategy. So in the A tier, we have Shadow Owls, Ionia, Yasuo, Karma, Sorcerers, Void, Kaisa, Rek'Sai, Reroll, Noxus, Shurima, Strategist, Azir, Gunners, Ravenous, Warwick, still solid, Samira. Bumped down a lot, but it's still playable in very specific circumstances. Akshan reroll, built different, Tristana, Jinx, Teemo. That's going to round out the A tier. And then in the B tier, we have Kayle, Riftwalker, Ekko reroll, Zed, Rogue, Double Trouble Taliyah, and then Multicaster in the C tier. So legends are very important in this patch, but you have to know how to use each and every one of them. So if you're playing normal, obviously just go Poro. Poro is going to be the best flex. However, what everyone's doing right now, all the good players, they're going Earth right now, and they're just YOLOing the tome, and they're going to be forcing whatever the tome gives them. Preferably something like Piltover into like a Gunner comp, because Piltover, you just get a huge T-Hex and you just demolish everything, right? But Shadow Owls is very good with a +1. Void is very good with a +1. Demacia, Bastion, all the comps are good with +1 traits. So that's why people are going Earth right now, and that's how they're kind of using it. Vladimir is very interesting too, because Vladimir allows you to play Bastion Aphelios very easily, because you take Transfusion to get a lot of health on your guys, and then afterwards you take Ascension, and then Ascension is just going to really buff up your damage dealers in the super late game. Not in the super late game, but in the super late parts of the fight. And then in the A tier, Ornn's still solid, Ezreal's still solid, Master Yi's good with Demacia, Caitlyn's good if you like playing like high tempo, and then Lee Sin's good for reroll. All the other ones are like, they're still playable, nothing wrong with that. Always keep this note down here, but the other ones are going to be a little bit better right now. So the first comp we're going to go over is Challengers. Challengers are good because everything else kind of got nerfed. You're just going to revolve around Yasuo and Kaisa carry, and this team also got changed a little bit too. Yasuo is a little bit better. I think even Kaisa is a little bit better. I forgot if that was this patch or last patch, but definitely overall very solid comp that you could use to pivot into other stuff in the super duper late game. You could flex this with Ionia as well, and that's going to be a very powerful comp. In terms of items, Spear of Shojin, very good on Kaisa. Yasuo really likes Edge of Night and Deathblade. Yasuo's AD scaling is 500%, so every attack damage he has is 5 damage on his ultimate. So Deathblade, very, very good for him. Heimerdinger's great late game, but there are a lot of different flex spots. So we have 8 units on the board right now. We have 6 Challenger plus Ionia for Shen. So your Heimerdinger could almost be anything. But we played this build a lot in the previous patches, so we'll move on into the next comp, which is going to be Deadeye. So Deadeye's good because Aphelios got buffed. Everything else also got nerfed. So you could just do the classic 4 Deadeye with Urgot and Aphelios carry. Urgot did get hit a little bit, but it's fine. And then put tank items on Sejuani. Alternatively, you could reroll for Akshan in some cases, or just use him as an item holder until you get Aphelios. And then Freljord's still going to Freljord people, and it's very solid overall. It's great if you're doing like a lot of attack damage builds. For example, Deadeye and Challengers both use the Deathblade really well. You could also use a Bloodthirster and Edge of Night on Yasuo or Urgot. They make use of those items like equally, though you do prefer the Titans on the Urgot instead. As for legends for Deadeye, having a lot of items is really good because you have so many different people who can hold items. You have like 2 tanks, or like a couple of tanks, 3 tanks even. You have like a couple of damage dealers, so Ornn's pretty good for that. Ezreal's pretty decent too. But the most important thing to have is like a Deathblade and a Rageblade on your Aphelios. After that, everything else is like pretty much optional, even though they are like, there is an order of importance, but make sure to get those 2 items for your team there. Next comp up, we have Bastion Aphelios. So this one is going to be a little bit different because you want double Rageblade Aphelios plus a Deathblade. Double Rageblade allows him to kind of really pop off because the front line is just going to tank everything. If you do get a Bastion +1, definitely go for 6 Bastion because that's going to be extremely tanky. And also make sure you have 3 Targon, because Taric and Soraka just perma keep your team alive. It's actually ridiculous because you don't even have to itemize them and they just like keep your whole team alive. There's not much else to say apart from that. So this version runs Ashe and Lissandra for Freljord and Deadeye, but you don't really need to run that if you have Heimerdinger. You could always go for 6 Bastion if you need to like remove units to kind of fit everything. Those would be the 2 units that you take out. But as you can see on the right hand side, Vlad is really good with this because you get Transfusion and Ascension, and that combo is just very deadly on this comp. It's a bit of a risky comp because you need Aphelios to kind of really get to 2-star because he's your only damage dealer. So you could have everything 2-starred and then Aphelios 1-star. Sometimes you might not be able to have enough to really power through some teams. But overall, this comp is really good. But yeah, you're taking transfusion 99% of scenarios, so you just go for Vlad. And then you kind of just lose streak in the beginning of the game, get bows to get double Gwynsu's, and then hopefully later on you could get the Deathblade too. All tank items preferred on Shen. Secondary tank items, either K'Sante or Taric, depending on who you have at that point. But this game is really good at winning a lot of games, at least from what I've seen, because it just completely demolishes everything. On to the next build, we have Demacia. Demacia is a build that I play the most now. I just played a stream. I played like, I think 7 games in a row of Demacia, and pretty solid overall, plus 100 LP. A video is coming out on that later, so subscribe below if you have not already, if you want notifications for that. But you just go Master Yi, you take Pumpin' Up. Pumpin' Up just gives you a lot of attack speed for your Garen. Remember the old Demacia build where people build a lot of Zeke's Heralds? Well, you don't need to do that anymore if you take Pumping Up. You have a secondary carry in Lux, so blue buff and Jeweled Gauntlet on her, but the most important thing by far is just getting Rageblade and Bloodthirster on Garen. I don't care what anyone says, you do not build any other items other than these two on Garen and then leave the third item as a Radiant. Of course, you're more than welcome to experiment with other items, but I am not going to take responsibility for your LP in those games. Always build these two items. It's the best combination of healing and damage, and that's all you really need from this comp. For Jarvan, he just needs a Protector's Vow, so as you notice already, because of the way Demacia's work, you normally get 6 items in a TFT game. So normally you have like 3 offense, 3 defense items. With this game, you only really need 5 items, so that means you can get perfect items. Just greed for perfect items. Rageblade, Bloodthirster on Garen, Protector's Vow on Jarvan, and then almost anything on Lux, but I prefer having a blue buff plus a damage item. And then your 6th item, it could either go on Aatrox or it could be a support item. Every item after that does not really matter unless you get like legendaries that you could itemize, but like in those cases, anything's good, you know? So in the early game, Noxus Opener is actually a pretty good item holder for all of the Garen items. They hold both Bloodthirster and Rageblade pretty decently, but you just want to take Pumping Up on Master Yi and hold on to all your Demacia units. In the late game, you could either get a Demacia spat to keep playing 7 Demacia or drop down to 5 Demacia and then add in legendaries such as Heimerdinger, get Shred on him, Aatrox, Senna, and Ryze. Portal's pretty dependent. Other flex units you could kind of fit into this build is Taric. It gives you both Bastion and Sorcerer. Swain gives you Strategist and Sorcerer. And sometimes you could even fit in 4 Juggernaut. Honestly, with all these different traits, you can make use of a lot of different emblems, so don't be afraid to take spatulas on carousels whenever you're playing this build. But very solid comp. Again, there's going to be like a huge, I think like a 3-hour compilation on Demacia. I know a lot of people have been waiting for that, but that's going to be coming out sometime this weekend, I hope. Onto the A tier, we have Shadow Owls. So Shadow Owls, you really only play with the emblem. I wouldn't really play it without it, but 6 Shadow Owls is really, really, really powerful. Anyone who's faced a Shadow Owl K'Sante just knows how oppressive it is, so he's going to be the best item holder for that. Shen is really good too. Ekko's decent. You could even use Aurelia or Yasuo or even Kai'Sa. There are a lot of different options there, but K'Sante is probably going to be the best late game one. But never aim for this comp. You play Earth, and then if you get +1 from an emblem, then you go for it. Or if you see one of the regular Shadow Owl emblems from the augments, that's really the only time you're kind of gunning for this comp. You could go for a Kalista reroll if you want. You don't have to. You could always just play like Gwen carry plus legendaries with the Shadow Owl spat. Both versions definitely work. And then Senna, of course, is going to be an absolute monster in the late game. She's going to be not healing, but shielding your entire team so often, it's actually just disgusting. But this comp, very solid right now, but only play it with the +1. Next up, we have Yasuo Ionia. So this one's going to be 6 Ionia, 4 Challenger. It's really powerful whenever you get an extra Ionia or Challenger spatula, because then you could throw it on a unit like Bel'Veth or Aatrox, and they make really good use of that trait. And you also have a lot of different item holders. So Ezreal Ornn going to be really good for this comp, but this comp is really similar to Challengers. So if you're playing Challengers and you get a bunch of Ionia units, definitely pivot into this because it's really, really good. But they pretty much play the same. Most of the units are the same. They just kind of spike at different points in the game. But standard leveling for this, if you need to check out the leveling guide, all this is on the website, bunnymuffins.lol/meta. And of course, you could check out the more in-depth how to play section while you're there. But yeah, standard leveling just means you're going for 4 cost units. And this is pretty much all there is to this build. This build was played a lot before, so I won't go too in depth on it. But next build up we have is Karma Reroll. Very, very popular build. A lot of people have been asking me, like, is Karma Reroll good? It's pretty good, but you need to get good spots for it, because if you don't get Ahri or if you don't get Karma 3-star, it kind of falls off. But if you do, then obviously the comp is really, really strong. So if you ever get one of those really good reroll augments, this comp is definitely something to consider. The only issue is that sometimes your Taric is contested by all the Bastion players, so you don't necessarily get Taric 3-star that often, but you don't really care that much. Like Karma and Lissandra are good enough. Late game, you have Ryze, Ahri, so it kind of flows into the game very easily. One interesting thing to do is kind of using like Dreaming Pool, because you kind of automatically get the late game units that you want, which is really, really nice. That goes for a lot of other builds, not just this one, but I just thought I would mention it. But yeah, 3-cost reroll pattern because you need to get Karma 3-star, so just stay level 7 or level 8 and then roll down all the way to 50 and then find some time later on in the game to all in to 0 and then hit your Karma 3-star after that. Next build up we have is Sorcerers. This comp got like hit a little bit, but they're still pretty good. The late game definitely isn't as strong. Just make sure you're playing 6 Sorcerers at all times. I think I would only play this if you have +1 Sorcerer. Other than that, I would kind of lean more towards other comps. However, if you're really good at the Sorcerer comp, you could probably play it in any position, and I don't see that many other players going for it right now, which makes it kind of uncontested for the moment. Next build up we have is Void Kai'Sa. Only play Void Kai'Sa with the +1 Void unit. It doesn't really make it worth it otherwise, because without the Baron, like this comp just isn't that powerful, and you'll probably just bleed out before you even get a top 4 in a lot of cases. Bel'Veth is really good in the late game if you have items on her, but overall you just do Kai'Sa carry, Sejuani main tank, and then secondary carry Rek'Sai if you reroll Rek'Sai. If not, level up, get Bel'Veth, put the items on Bel'Veth, and that's pretty much all you need to do. But having +1 Void, even +2 Void, makes it really, really that much stronger. So it's good with Urf. It's another one of those Urf strategies that you can kind of try. Next build up we have is Rek'Sai reroll. Very similar to Void because you play around Rek'Sai, but you want to go for 6 Bruiser. Again, Urf really, really good for this because you get a Bruiser emblem and then you don't have to rely on hitting Scion. And then if you do hit Scion, you can just remove Vernekton or Cho'Gath and you're good to go there. Eventually, you do need a secondary carry for this comp. Rek'Sai is not going to be able to do everything on his own, but in the late game, you could use almost any legendary unit in the back to kind of complement your team. So it could be Heimerdinger. Heimerdinger's great because he reduces all the resistances and burns people. But you could also get a Morello on someone. You could use like even an Ahri with some items can do okay. Bel'Veth's pretty decent. Just any legendary, get them, put them in the back line, and that's going to help your Rek'Sai that much. Best build's going to be BT Titans plus a 3rd item. IE's good, Handed Justice good, 2nd Titan's good. Pretty much anything goes. There's a big list down here that you kind of look at. And then Lissandra, you could reroll Lissandra 3-star because you might as well if you can afford it because they're both 3-cost units. And then Lissandra likes Morello, Spear Shojin, Archangels, pretty much anything just throw on her. And then all tank items go on Sejuani and Scion. Next build up we have is Noxus reroll. So Noxus reroll, it did take a hit because Samira got changed, but it's still good if you get specific spots for it. So obviously if you get a lot of Noxus stacks early, that's going to be the best time to play this. I would not lose streak into this unless you know for sure that you could stabilize on stage 3-2, because again, you really need the stacks to get this comp going, and you need a lot of copies of Darius because Darius is the only unit that matters in this comp if you're doing the classic Noxus reroll. Of course, there's the other version of Noxus reroll where you go reroll Samira into Darius. Not as strong, we'll get more into that later, but Katarina really not that important. It's mainly just like a Darius show. But yeah, 3-cost reroll for this, and a bunch of different options for Noxus, spatula holder down here, and also the how to play section if you need more info. Shurima is going to be the next build. Shurima definitely took a step up recently. They buffed it a bunch. Is it that good? It's not incredible, but it's playable. So again, with Urf, +1 Shurima makes this comp so much easier to play because you get the 7 Shurima power spike and you get to fit in a lot of complementary synergies. For example, a lot of people like fitting in Juggernaut to make their Nasus tankier. If you're running Akshan as like a secondary carry, sometimes you could do like Sejuani plus Ashe so that you get Freljord as well. And Azir's just overall a solid unit. Nothing wrong with him right now. Just make sure you have a Rage Blade on him, and you definitely need it because all these people, they're taking like super defensive comps right now, such as like the Bastion build, and then Rage Blade really helps him kind of fight into the late game. This comp likes a lot of items, so Ornn's really good. Urf's good if you RNG into this. Urf's good in a lot of different comps right now, to be honest, because anything with a +1 trait is just going to be really good just in this specific patch. But Ornn's pretty solid as well. Poro, you could flex into this. A lot of legends are really good into this. Next build up, we have Strategist Azir Lux. This is with 3 Shurima, 4 Strategists, and 3 Demacia. Very solid comp as well. It's just a different version of the build above. So when do you choose Strategist Azir Lux, and when do you choose Shurima Azir? So if you get a lot of ability power items, then obviously go for Strategist Azir and Lux because both of them use ability power items. If you don't have that, and you get like some attack damage items or like some bruiser items, obviously go the regular Shurima because Nasus and Akshan can make use of those items. So it's just really your items that are going to decide which one you kind of go for. But they play almost exactly the same. You have like Jarvan, Nasus as like your main tanks, and then in the back line you just have Azir plus like whoever else is secondary carry. Next build up we have is Gunners. So Gunners, these are going to be great from a Piltover start, and then you run like the 4 Gunner 4 Zon version, very, very powerful. And again, you do that with Earth, but regular Gunners, they got nerfed a bit, but it's still good. So it's S tier with Piltover opener, but it's probably A tier, maybe like low A tier without it, because the Aphelios versions are a bit better, and then the other Piltover players are going to be contesting you anyway. So I guess if there's no Piltover player, you could go for this comp uncontested and kind of flex between Gunner and Aphelios. Oh, and by the way, in case you wanted to know which comps are like high A tier, high S tier, low S tier, check out the Patreon or the OnlyFans, because every time I make a meta snapshot, I kind of update on a more granular level where everything is. But let's move back into the next comp, which is Ravenous Hunter Warwick. Still solid, it's still okay. It's not the best ever, but if you have good items for Warwick, you might as well just try to go for this, because it's still good for like top 4ing and things like that. And sometimes you could even sneak out a win if you get a good secondary carry. But overall, like, this is still pretty solid. 2 cost reroll for this. The only issue right now is no one else is doing 2 cost reroll, so it's not going to be that easy or like free to get. Before, in previous metas, a lot of other people were going like Taliyah reroll. There may be people going Kassadin Riftwalker, but now like there's Zed rerollers, but now no one 2 cost rerolls. So Warwick is going to be a little harder to hit. So I would only go for this if you have really good items on him at the start of the game. Next build up, we have Samira and Cassio reroll. This comp got nerfed a bunch, but it's still decent. It's still playable if you get like perfect items on them. There's probably better stuff to go for, but if you get like a ton of Samiras in the early game, like why not go for this? But that's kind of all I would do. 1 cost reroll there, so definitely do not level up. I remember reviewing a game for one of my how to get to diamond videos, and a lot of players, I think even like plat players, didn't actually know how to 1 cost reroll, and they were like leveling up too early. But you really have to not level up, just like follow this leveling pattern inside this guide here. That's really all you have to do. And yeah, it's like you just need to not touch your level up button and then roll properly to get 3-star Samira. Next build up we have is Akshan reroll. Akshan reroll, definitely a step back right now. It's like, would I rather play Aphelios? Yes, but if I get a free 3-star Akshan, I'll play it and hopefully try to like top 3 with it. 2-star Akshan is probably gonna get you like a 5th or a 6th, but 3-star, you could probably get like a 3rd. It's kind of like one of those mid-lane comps. But if you get it to complement either an Azir or a Aphelios, it's actually still pretty decent. So you could always do that instead and just like add it on to like one of the other comps. They're both pretty solid, but I wouldn't be gunning for this from the start. Build different, still pretty good. Aphelios, Kai'Sa, Zeri, all viable carries in the back. And then pretty much any of the 4 cost tanks, all of them are super good in this build. Just remember to run duplicates and you're good to go from there. Next build up, we have Tristana reroll. Still okay, but I would only do it if I have like a ton of Tristanas and a ton of Maokais early on and good items for them. So it still has its spots, but there are definitely better things to kind of go for right now. 1 cost reroll pattern for that, similar to the Samira one. 1 cost reroll, again, it's better if a lot of other players are going for it. And before, a lot of people were playing Kayle, and that made this comp a little bit better. But since no one's playing Kayle anymore, it's a little more difficult to kind of just reroll Tristana or reroll the Noxus units. Jinx reroll is going to be the next build up. Again, suffers from the same 2 cost reroll problem, but she's still pretty solid. I'll only play her with like the robotic arms on augment. That's going to be like the super duper best one. So either you get like tons of Jinxes early for no reason, and then you're like, all right, let me go for Jinx, or you get robotic arm with good items for Jinx, then you're like, all right, let me try this again too. Robotic arm did get nerfed a bit, so that's why it's a little bit lower on the tier list right now, but it's still a pretty solid comp if you're able to get the right setup for it. Next build up we have is Teemo reroll. Teemo reroll finally made its way into the A tier. It got a lot better. They buffed like all the multicasters again, and yeah, so it went from like C tier to B tier to A tier because they kept buffing it, and I guess it's kind of a comp now. Again, not too many people are playing 2 cost reroll, so if you know other people are playing 2 cost reroll, then yes, go for a Teemo comp because it's going to be easier to hit all your units. But I would not just gun for this comp unless I get a lot of free Teemos earlier on. You'll notice that a lot with the lower A tier kind of builds because TFT is about adapting. We kind of walk through like, let's see how many comps we walked through. I think it goes around like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 comps now. There are only only 8 players in a game, and like 4 of the comps, they're like the same, right? So like 2 people are playing the same comp, and other 2 people are playing the same but of a different comp. So out of those 21 comps, obviously they're not going to be seen that often. They're not going to be seen every game, but there are always these different spots that you can kind of flex a lot of these builds into. And if you want to like get better and better, you have to kind of recognize when it's good to go for these builds. Let's go into the B tier. B tier is a lot easier. Kayle reroll is like okay. Only go for it if it's like Scuttle Puddle or Hall of the Nine, when you could get like ridiculous amounts of gold so that you could hit Kayle 3-star and push levels. It's very difficult to do, so I only recommend it on like high econ maps. But yeah, 1 cost reroll for that, and then power level all the way up to 9 if you can. Riftwalker Kassadin, this comp got nerfed, what I think is for no reason. Obviously only played this with the Riftwalker augment, but overall it's like okay, but I think they nerfed it for no reason, so I just have no reason to play this right now because it was already okay before, not great. So after the nerf, definitely not gonna just like try gunning for it. Ekko reroll, only do this in very specific spots. You still could crank it out, but B tier comps were on our like 23rd comp, 24th comp, so you can already see the priority going down a lot, especially since there are only 8 players per game. You're not going to see too many of these comps. Same with Zed reroll, Rogue reroll. Rogue reroll, like rogues have been ignored so much this whole set, and maybe they buff them next patch just for fun because they just haven't been meta pretty much ever. Taliyah Double Trouble reroll. Double Trouble kind of got nerfed before, not this patch, but I believe in previous patches, and Taliyah got nerfed as well. So not as good, but it's still an option if you have like perfect item Taliyahs or a bunch of Taliyahs available and you see Double Trouble. That's kind of the only time I would even consider this comp. But make sure you go like full damage item on Taliyah and then full tank items on Set. You don't really care about anything else. But C tier Multicaster, and that's going to be pretty much it for all the comps. Let's get into how I would play the patch right now. So actually, let's summarize first. So Challengers, Deadeye, Bastion, Demacia. None of these comps really super stand out. There's no like super OP comp. A lot of people thought it was Demacia before. On the first day, everyone was like, holy cow, Demacia OP. Everyone started playing Demacia. But then you realize if you're contested, it's really difficult to play. Not difficult, it's easy to play, but it's hard to place well in. So then everyone bounced off of that. They went into all the other comps, and then people started doing Earth. They're YOLOing all the Earth emblems and kind of just playing with that style. That seems to be the most popular style right now. So let's go over how I would approach the patch. So me personally, I'm going to Garen reroll every single game. It's not optimal, but it's what I'm doing. And I think I kind of figured out when to like give up on Garen 3 and when to go for it. And for some reason, whenever I'm playing it, other people are pivoting. So I just type Garen as soon as the game starts, and then I slash deafen. And then all the other Master Yi players, you know, people are going Garen when they have the Master Yi legend, as you see over here, like Legend, Master Yi, and then I'm just uncontested, and then I get free top 4s. It's hard to win without Garen 3-star. It's hard to even get second without Garen 3-star, but like Garen 2-star, you could get like 4th and 5th every single game and like sneak a 3rd every now and then. And then when you do hit, you go 1st or 2nd. So it's like pretty solid payoff in my opinion if you are uncontested. It depends on the day. On the first day of the patch, everyone and their moms were going Master Yi and Garen reroll. But when I played today, this was Thursday, I'm posting this video on Friday, I maybe saw one other Master Yi every other game. So pretty much every other game I was uncontested. And then in the games where there were other Master Yi players, they pivoted off because I typed /deafen and like said Garen. It may not work for you, but it worked for me. So I'm gonna keep doing it. It probably helps because my match history is like all Garen, so people might look me up and see that I am not pivoting. So the more you play it, the more rewarded you kind of get from this. Second strategy is literally anything else because there's so many other comps to play right now. Like again, in the S and A tier, we had what, 21 comps, lots of other stuff to play. Go Earth, go YOLO. That's what all the like best players right now are doing. You just pop the tome early on and just go for whichever you get. So like Shadow Owl really good, Void really good, Ionia and Challenger both pretty decent, Bastion really good. Any of those are the ones I'm like really gunning for. Everything else, it's like they're still decent, but that's how I would kind of prioritize the emblems that you get, because you kind of have to know how to play around the random emblems. Oh, I forgot, like Piltover is also really good. Probably the best one is Piltover. Oh, I have it over here. YOLO your tome early, go for Piltover and Massive Loss Streak, and then cash out later. Alternatives are Void, Shadow Owl, Challenger, Bastion, Sorc, Noxus, Shurima. Pretty much just force whatever the tome gives you. And then the third option is go Vladimir, force Bastion, Aphelios, and take Transfusion and Ascension every game, and pray you hit Aphelios too. Those are going to be like the 3 different ways to kind of play right now. I'm going to be doing the first one, but it's up to you what you choose after that. Actually, let me know down in the comments how you guys are playing. Actually, let me know down in the comments how you all are playing, because it'd be kind of fun to kind of know and like compare. But that's going to be it for me today. You can check out everything on my website, bunnymuffins.lol/meta. And if you want even more detailed information on the tier list, obviously the Patreon and OnlyFans are there as well, but it's not like anything crazy. I don't really like charging for like extra information, or like I don't like hiding information behind a paywall. I know I'm kind of doing it, but not really, because it's not anything like that secretive or something. It's just like an opinion, but like all these are pretty solid. Also, I'm going to be coming out later with a coaching video with Void Sin, so you can check that out this weekend. I'll be having one on my channel and on his channel. But that's going to be it for me today. Hope to see you all later. Good luck on your climb.